The Morning After with Joseph Kabuleta.
Welcome to another edition of the Morning After podcast with Joseph Kabuleta. Last week we discussed issues to do with taxation and what, but before we get into the thick of it, Joseph, how was your week?
My week was as to be expected. So many thoughts about what's going to be like the morning after or the time after. And now that has been preoccupied a lot of my mind about things that, are happening in this country. And, I was looking at the tax proposals that have been put out there. And I was seeing that URA started with a figure they wanted, which I think is about 4.8 trillion from the new taxes. Then they worked their way backwards, which is a bit weird. It's like setting the price of your commodity based on how much money you did, rather than what the market value is like. Because an extra 4.8 trillion shillings pulled out of this economy without too much creativity on how to get it, and might be a bit tight, because some of the proposals we said the last time, some of the proposals that were thrown out 2 years ago because of what they would do to different industries, for instance, the taxation of cement, tires, and the transport land and all that, have come back because money has to be made from somewhere. And now the problem is that when you have spent 40 years using poverty as a political tool and beating everybody down into poverty, and then you get to a point when you now need money from those very same people for SGR to railway, for all these projects that your neighbors and yourself have promised to do, and the people from whom you're getting them have been beaten down thoroughly, and their ability to produce has been beaten down by you. And then now that's where the dilemma comes. So as usual, what URA does, it's going to punish those who are compliant. They'll go for the soft taxes, the easy to collect taxes. So they will go for mobile money, they will go for phones, all transactions of phones. They'll probably go for banks, they'll go for things like those fuel and so on. Very easy to tax things, imports, and to cars and so on. And then they put all the taxes on there, which is like now an annual ritual. Increase tax on fuel, increase tax on this. It's now an annual ritual. There's very little creativity when it comes to expanding the tax base. But then, considering what the economic nature of the country is like, very no amount of creativity. It's like milking a stone. Like it's dry, absolutely dry, and we've come to that place. But somehow money has to be gotten to, make people happy. So anyway, those are some of my thoughts.
Well, I had a fairly tough week. I was down with fever, but I'm now back on my feet. So, Joseph, we talked about the grim economic situation that has characterized the last 40 years. But in the midst of this situation, we see some entities, especially commercial banks, reporting billions and billions of shillings in profits. How do you think the banks make it in a situation where very many businesses, where very many people are complaining, where very many people are collapsing?
That's maybe you will go for me. I say your own question, because that's a dilemma. Because I've also been watching the profit margins of banks. When every other industry seems to be pointing, basically nose diving, like a plane whose engines have collapsed, banks are just soaring and making a lot of money. And now that usually means that maybe they are, I don't know, are they helping businessmen to come up? Are they are banks actually, because previously banks would tell come, we help your business grow, we are partners in growth and so on. That's what the advertising says. But is that what the reality is like?
Well, I think a lot of banks are fixing money. If you look at their financial statements, in government bonds, in treasury bills, they are playing it safe, because in that way they are lending to government. Many of these banks actually are not lending to business organizations, entities that would create a difference for common for the common person on the ground. By fixing in these treasury bonds, they are assured, and they usually give a high rate of return, 14, 15%. Some of these bonds and bills in which they invest in. So generally, that means a lot of money is not they're not circulating the money in the economy. The money that would benefit a small businessman, a woman, a small company to thrive. And in situations where banks lend that money, the interests are above 20%, 25% in some cases. Of course, the high interest rates reflect the kind of risks the banks attach to the lending. They are very fearful that the average Ugandan is going to default.
But there have also been issues of people saying that they pay part of the money they pay is for insurance.
Yes.
And yet, I'm sure when the thing for which they pay the insurance occurs, the bank does not consider insurance as that if it's almost like a tax. There are so many silent taxes. You pay insurance here, pay this. Anybody who owns the car knows you pay or whatever you call third party. But who has ever benefited apart from stopping a policeman from waving you down?
Because you have never pushed it.
No, I tried one day. The squeeze will not be worth the juice because you'll be pursuing something so small, but it will be so difficult to go and get it out. So there's quite a number of things there. But now, every time the government is the number one borrower, it means it's actually taking money that should be for the private sector.
Yes.
And that means the private sector has to shrink as a result. And because, of course, every bank, given the chance, would lend the government, because government carries the total risk. But then the growth is in lending the private sector. But anyway, I suppose they have to make profit, and they are making loads of profit. Perhaps the only businesses, the only outstanding business that where you have almost more than 20-something banks, all of them registering profits, and not just simple profits, huge post-tax profits. So I don't know.
Joseph, the morning after. The morning after, what happens? I mean, there seems to be a suggestion that once Museveni leaves, probably his legacy and dynasty could come to an end. But then we see some indicators that that dynasty could be prolonged in the event that the son, General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, succeeds him. Do you think it would be any different from his father?
No, they forget about being different. It's not going to happen. And there's a reason I'm confident that's not going to happen. And so many people ask why, because it seems everything has been pointing in that direction.
Yes.
I was seeing the other day the number of people were, part of his birthday run. First of all, the one thing that messes, I mean, well, those people, don't they have any creativity? Like Kamaka just had the birthday run. Can't you think of something else? I mean, do you have minds?
The other day
usually, people, the problem with people who have money is that they think they can get away with lack of creativity. So now you're putting people in a position where just because there's been a Kamaka run and there's been a whole mass of crowd of people very successful. So also we are to do, that sort of thing that you got and copy that spirit. Like the whole thing was boring from the outset, but so many people were there, especially for the cameras, not to run, to be seen, to wave, to in the hope that the son, the son would see them
wherever he is, on his phone or wherever in his.
You will see them and acknowledge that they were there. And I'm saying, look at these people. They are living a fantasy. It is not going to happen. I know there have been countries across here where fathers have been succeeded by sons. And I'm seeing now that also developing a bit in Cameroon because after so many years of, Paul Biya, his son is now vice president and in line to take over from him. When the man is 93.
It happened in DR Congo.
So to be, yes.
Kabuleta Joseph and
his son. But you see, one difference you have to know between Uganda and those countries, I'll give an example just of Cameroon. Is Cameroon, the president is just a figurehead. That's why he wins elections and goes
for holiday.
Until the next election. There are people who are running the country, and there is a whole sphere of influence of people, so many of them, who have an interest, a vested interest in him staying in power. So they are the ones who actually ensure that he stays in power, not for himself, just for him, he has to be there as a figurehead, but for themselves. But that sphere of influence is so big and so difficult to crack. That's why, there was a bit of an opposition this past election last year, that somehow those same people come and coach the opposition, because they are not fighting for PR, they're fighting for themselves, because they are beneficiaries. Now, the difference with Uganda is that Museveni is, like I said, the most selfish leader in the world. I don't think if there will be another more selfish leader even in the next 100 years. So now, and he has been using and dumping. So that sphere of people who would be beneficiaries of the continuity is very narrow. Now, it should be wider than that, you see. And now, because all the Pope started with uses and dumps, and now the sphere has reduced almost down to his immediate family. No, those are not enough to sustain the transition. Now, when they will try to do it, it's just going to be his family. Because the people who would be saying, no, we want his son, not for the son, for themselves, the way it is in, let's say, in Cameroon. They want Biya to continue, not for him, for themselves. They know after reading he's going to go. But here in Uganda, it's done. It's just his family. Now the sphere has reduced, until now it's down to his family. And now I'm seeing the way they are being. The son seems to think he's going to use brute force and forcing everybody and scaring everybody. And that's not what his father has done. Okay, and if his father had taken that direction of brute force, pure and brute force, he would have ruled 40 years. Then I'm seeing their moves. I was seeing the daughter, the one who is the pastor, saying she wants to gather pastors to pray and thank God for peaceful elections where so many people were killed. And the thing is, it's not like they're thanking God for elections. They're actually mobilizing. Now you see the family, everyone has really to stand up and do something, because this man who has been the pillar, of this whole thing we have been doing, is aging. And the Lord can be happy with him anytime and receive him. He said that himself. So my point is that now the people around are scared, because the pillar of their existence is now whatever. So everyone is crumbling. The girl is going for pastors. This one is going for what? And now the son believes is going to use the army, and there's a whole lot of. But you see, the reason there is fear is because they know it's not there. It's not as sure. Now, if there had been a huge sphere of people who are beneficiaries, direct beneficiaries of the Museveni dynasty, he wouldn't be bothered. Those would be the people who would say, want his son. The way it was with Kabila. He comes, his wife is killed, people get his son and put him there, because people don't want change. For them, because human beings are all selfish. So it's for themselves, it's not for him. Now, how many people can genuinely, I mean, even those people who are surrounding wars and so on, how many can say it's, they are doing it out of a desire, and they are sure that they are going to have a place in his kingdom and so on, Everybody is jittery, and they are trying to study the situation. Some others, like I was seeing this man was take a beautiful for Munyoro saying that for me, my support for this Museveni family
ends with the father.
And there are going to be so many such people. So the reality is that Moses has so far been a good scarecrow. He's scaring away so many people, but the truth is it is not going to happen. It is not going to happen, and because of Museveni's selfishness, and because of the way he has done it, he chose to go the self. And he also, his punishment for being a very selfish leader is going to be the lack of legacy. Museveni is a kind of leader who will die tomorrow, and nobody is going to talk about him 1 week after his death.
Are you sure?
Yes. Let me tell you, people talk about you because of what you've done in their life, how you've transformed their lives. Okay? And
you're saying 40 has no transformation at all in any aspect of society.
I want to tell it to me. Did you read the report of UPOS about how many Ugandan families have toilets and so on.
Nice.
Like we're talking about toilets, you see. And now for him, comes now this, he's so good at obfuscating. Then the other day I was seeing him saying, now America is circling around the moon. And I said, this is classic obfuscation. Like we don't want to circle the moon. We want to have 3 meals a day for our children. We want to have good roads in our city. We want to have businesses that thrive. We want to have a country that is functional and is not a family business. We want to have basic. If you want to go to the moon, Mr. Museveni, get a parachute and go. Be welcome not to come back. Ugandans don't want to go to the moon. Don't tell us about. By the way, let me tell you, when I hear him saying those things of Americans are now dominating space, I have to hold myself from growing up.
That's
Like,
his ambition.
Which ambition? The ambition only can't even make roads. And that is classic obfuscation. Like when I hear him saying that, I actually have to stop myself from throwing up. Because there are things we need as a country, basic things that we need as a country, which he has denied us on purpose.
But Joseph,
And now he's letting, let Americans go to the moon. Let him go with them if he wants.
but Joseph, all this doubling and tripling of the GDP from 86, all this increase of the revenue collection that he normally cites, all these figures of, say, production of milk, matoke, he likes casting back to 86 to show that there has been a change. You want to say that that counts for nothing in the 40 years?
No, let me tell you something. I told you this before, that it is all relative. If you want it to be just Uganda, so for Uganda, as I told you, if I stand on the starting line and I run 100 meters, I'm going to win if I'm alone. Guaranteed. Now, as we said last time, let's compare to what countries around us have been doing. What has Kenya been doing
within that period?
Within that period. What has Tanzania done within that? What has Rwanda done within that period? Then we shall say that we shall see if there's any progress. But you see, he keeps on projecting back to something. If a child is, let's say, 5 years old and they are 1.5 feet tall, okay? I'm just kidding. That might be normal for 5 years old. But if that child now is 15 and they are 2 feet tall, they are stunted. But they have increased from 1.5 to 5 to 2. So if you are to look at it in real terms, is the person growing? Yes, but he has stunted because at 15 he's supposed to be more than 2 feet. So now that's the problem. Now you can point to small success, but 40 years is a long time. It's a long time of wasted time, just making somebody have his dream of. And of course, he has. And now one of the reasons I'm telling you that it's not good because he exercises full power. I think Museveni must be the envy.
He has centralized all power.
He must be the envy of all leaders of the world because he sits down and decides how much money I've collected. This is what I want. This is what my wife is going to take. This is what my son-in-law is going to take.
This is what Pinette is taking.
This is what Pinette is taking and what? And nobody is going to do anything. There is no budgeting. There is nothing. You budget what is left after he has taken off everything. There was a time, I think, one or 2 years ago, when his wife, the Minister of Education, said she needed 1.6 trillion for educating refugees. I almost collapsed because her ministry
alone, the budget
had less than 400 billion.
Education for education purposes only.
Yes,
the Ministry of Education and supposed to have less than 400 billion.
Yes, for educating. But she wanted 1.6 trillion for educating refugees. And I just laughed and said, I think that's a classified budget. Now, the thing is, there is no president in the world who exercises authority like Museveni. He's not there. But but as I told you, all this, he has, I mean, kudos to him. He has managed. He knows Ugandans. He has worked his way around us properly and put us in a tight corner. Kudos to him. But his punishment is going to be a lack of legacy. Okay? People will be talking about Amin, will be talking about Obote, long after they have forgotten that Museveni even never lived this world. That is the legacy of selfishness.
But Joseph, going back to the issue of MK, saying that the base has shrunk. The base has shrunk. You don't have you may not have the same base. But over the years, as he has come up in the army, we have seen a number of people who have joined the army under his influence. We have seen a number of people who have joined a lot of these institutions, government agencies, under his influence. I mean, I could cite so many people. I mean, Alan Kasoja is in Uganda Media Center. Yeah. He's also trying, the point I'm trying to make is that why do I underestimate him when he's also trying to create his base? Aren't you underestimating him? Because he has a base in the private sector, he has a base in the government. When you see all these Daudi Kabandas, these young MPs who have just made it to parliament, a lot of them owe their allegiance to MK. Do you underestimate that kind of base to push MK all through?
Let me tell you, all of that, we shall see what it is made of when the old man is not there. People are loyal to the old man. That's why I say kudos to him. He has some people who are loyal to him, either through fear or through what. But he has people who are loyal to him, and I've met some of them. And loyalty is never transferred. Let nobody lie to you. Loyalty is not transferred from father to son. And you say I'm underestimating the man. From my experience, I think people are overestimating him. Absolutely overestimating him. Like grossly overestimating him. That's the reality. And now the more we stop thinking Mugos and think about what are we going to do with Uganda after Museveni, the better for us. Because that direction is not going to be there. I'm telling you, it is not going to be there. It is nice now when the old man is there and he can say things that everybody is, in the line because the old, they are scared of the old man and so on. But everything changes when that old man goes. First of all,
depending on the circumstances, how he goes.
First of all, okay, let's leave that. This is Uganda. And Museveni has run the country as like his personal business. How many personal businesses do you know outlive their survivors? I mean, their owners or their proprietors after their death in Uganda?
Few.
So why do people think that this is the only one which is going to succeed? Because he has the army.
So Uganda is like a kiosk to Museveni.
Let me tell you, we have characteristics as Ugandans. And Museveni studied them. That's why he has ruled us like this. I told you there are things which we should know about ourselves. Now, I've known that throughout how many, very few businesses outlive their proprietors. And there's a second and third generation. Very few. And for no apparent reason, even if the father tries to put the son in the business, tries to do what, very few. And sometimes it's even so, because in every business, everything is personalized. So people, the father will go and in the bank, he knows the manager is going to get a loan, he's going to go. The father has all the ability.
Actually, we don't have more than 5 businesses, indigenous businesses that have gone beyond the second, third generation, with the exception of the Indian-owned businesses like Madivani and but the indigenous. We don't have more than 2 that have gone beyond the, people look at the second generation. But for me, I think the bigger test is usually the third. Let me give you an example. The late Morana died. Jessa survived. It's now run by the kids. I would want to see how Jessa would be when it's run by the grandkids. For me, that's a test.
Not even the fact that the kids are running it and still they are successful.
Yeah, that's still too early.
That's good. That is good by Ugandan standards.
By Ugandan standards.
It's very good. So now, what makes you think that the country, which has been Museveni's personal business, is going to be any different? That is going to handle a lot of us are going to go like shit. And I don't even know why people think like that, because the manner in which he has, and I won't say this again, he has used that dumped people over his 40 years. Okay? First of all, there are so many the disgruntled people. And there are so many, there are few people who want continuity for the sake of, because there are so many people who have been in this government and who are close to him.
And so many have benefited financially from
Not so many, few, very few, but they are there who have benefited financially. And they're the ones who are struggling so hard to continue, to carry on the continuity and what. And when I look at them, I have, and even members of his family and what, I have good news and bad news for them. I'll start with the bad news. The bad news is that that father son thing is not going to happen. You can take that to the bank. It's not going to happen. That's the bad news. But the good news is this. They have nothing to worry about. Because when that old man is gone and we take control of this country, we shall have no appetite for revenge, for retribution. That's right. We shall have no appetite for trying to get after people and try to do things and so on, none whatsoever. So all the money they have, all the properties they have, and what they will enjoy them peacefully. Nobody's going to touch that. Nobody's going, because I know what happens when I know there are people who are angry. But anger is not a strategy. Okay. And when you get down that path and start fighting, you're a beneficiary of the government, we are going to, come and fight, that is off. What happens is those people fight back and you lose an opportunity to rebuild the nation. So that's why, and I said it, I talked about it a bit previously here. That's why you don't fight anybody. If he has stolen all this money, just let him have it. Okay? For the sake of building the nation. Now, some people don't understand that. You say, you're condoning corruption. You don't understand what it takes to build a nation. That's the legacy of Nelson Mandela. After all those things that were done to them, he says, if we start fighting these whites, we shall have no country. We are going to be perpetually fighting. Up to now, they will still be fighting each other. He said, let's forget about what happened in the past. They have given us what we wanted, which was a democratic, government, one man, one vote. That's what we wanted. They gave it to us. Now let's look forward. Same thing as what happened in Kenya. You mentioned it some stage. When there were people who were disgruntled for Moi's government, there was torture, there was what he calls a kind of leader. Near your house and all. There were people who were really disgruntled. And whom he had hammered, especially the businessmen, because he knew they did not support him. So he took away all government contracts and what, and gave them to Indians and what. So there was and that's a big thing there. There was a lot of disgruntled. But now when Kibaki came, he made sure nobody looks backwards. He put commissions on inquiry just to waste people's time.
To cool tempers of his team. These guys who had come promising we are going to do this. Yeah.
And then when they come to you, what did the commission on inquiry? We are looking forward, we are looking backwards. And so the old man lived his life peacefully and died peacefully in Kenya. And that's what it takes to build a nation. Otherwise, you continue fighting all your lives. Like you continue. So now, those people who are scared, that what are we going to do this after this man is gone? What are we going to do? If they will be safe and secure in this country, nobody's going to require anybody to go into exile. And because people fear, when you get to the age of 50 and 60 and what, you don't want to go to exile. Then you say you want to be whole. Now, those are people who if they hear change of government, they start shaking. They have no reason to shake. Nobody is going to require anybody to leave the country. This is our country. We have to survive in it together. All we want is to change the politics from what Museveni is, make them poor. 40 years of making them poor to actually allowing Ugandans to thrive in business. And this is what we are going to be talking about. Some of the things we are going to do to give Ugandans a proper picture of what it is going to be like after 7. So they're not despondent. Because when we talk about Uganda, everybody is like, please, like we are a basket case of a country, we are headed nowhere. That is not true. There's only one stumbling block. And thankfully, God might soon, need him more than us.
Joseph, you have you have discounted MK's chances of taking over his father. Then who would it be? You are using we. Is it going to be a set of institutions? Are we?
First of all, let me tell you this.
I'm saying, I mean, is it going to be another a charismatic leader coming over? Taking over? Because you're discounting MK. But you're not telling us how you think now the situation evolves from the morning after. Museveni is no longer in power. But it's not MK. So how does the situation evolve?
Let me tell you, it is from what I've seen in other countries. After 40 years of a dictatorship, power is negotiated. Nobody comes and takes it, wholesomely. No, that it has not happened. After 40 years, it's negotiated. Now, when Museveni is gone, there are all sorts of players will come to negotiate how the country is going to be governed. Okay,
like clan leaders in Somalia.
Okay. You remember even Museveni himself, they were part of the Moshi Conference.
Yes, the Moshi in '79 before that removed Amin.
Yes. After fighting Amin, and his was only just 8 years. But still the Moshi Conference sat down and they were discussing how to share power. There's going to be something similar to that, where different forces of different people sit together and discuss what the future of the country is. It's not going to be that it's now passing from one person to one person. Nobody is ever going to exercise the amount of authority and power over this nation that Museveni has.
What is going to lead to that sit down, Joseph? You said there's going to be a sit down. In the Ugandan situation, there was some kind of chaos. In the Moshi situation, there was some kind of chaos. Tanzania was preparing to overthrow Amin militarily, which meant that they didn't want a power vacuum. It was planned to help Uganda, and which it did. In the event, they didn't want a power vacuum after Amin's ouster. What kind of situation is going to create that dialogue or that meeting of different players in Uganda?
Now, here's the thing.
Is there going to be some kind of chaos when Museveni leaves? That would mean that a certain group of people have now to sit and say, you guys, this is what we get. Let's move forward like this. Let's incorporate this.
There may or may not be some chaos, limited chaos. But what forms all that? The same thing as what happened in Moshi. In Moshi, there was a Museveni group were also fighting. I mean,
Chukos Malum,
then there was
Flonasa, Oboto Soy, the UPC. There are different groups.
Different groups. We're out of Usutra, all fighting, I mean. And even if they were all in Dar es Salaam, they never saw eye to eye. Museveni and Obote. So that's what made them sit down together when that happened. Of course, there was Tanzania playing some sort of moderation role and so on. But when there is a need and when there is something there are so many stakeholders in this country. It's just that somehow, because of this 40 years, people have been stifled.
Are we talking about religious institutions? Are we talking about culture institutions?
Civil institutions, religious.
Civil society is almost down to bare bones.
Whatever is left of it will be there. We're talking about religious. We're talking about political heads. Talk political parties. We're talking about people. Everybody who has been involved. Like it was in Moshi thing. Everybody who has been involved in the process of fighting for change, sitting down and saying, now, this is how it is going to be. It's after. The way I see it, there might not be too much. Leaders emerge. So even within that, one person emerges and,
there will have to be a leader to emerge.
Yeah, but then a leader emerges, but then he has to be in position to share, to split things with other people. You see, not to take it all on himself all up. So he says, that, you've also fought for this. This is what you take. This is what you take. This is what you get. Not like everyone is president. You have one president, but then, different ways of sharing power and power and other things. So I think that's what will happen. So the idea that after 40 years of dictatorship, we're just going to be passed over from father to son, that is fantasy. That is fantasy. It ain't gonna happen.
Interrogating your face's father, Joseph, you have bought the Moshi. after the Moshi conference, some leaders were chosen, Yusuf Lule. But then we saw some kind of instability. The situation that resulted, the political was a little bit unstable. Remember, after 3 months, they want to change a leader. You see, which shows that also the talks may not have been as thorough. Lule comes on 6-8, Binaisa, then there's a military commission, the Mwangas, which shows that there were some issues. What similar issues? Because talks are between individuals. We all have our different egos. We have different interests and what. In any case, someone may want to come and the justification may be there, but someone may misuse it.
That's a possibility.
Now, how do we guard against such something like that? How do we guard against another Museveni-like person emerging out of those talks? And this time it has a far much stronger hold over Uganda.
Let me tell you, after these 40 years, people have learned so many things. And it will be very difficult for somebody to come and pull the same tricks that Museveni pulled. Just like nobody can go to fight a guerrilla war now, like the way Museveni did. The time for that ended. It's not possible. You understand? So there are things which happen once and they do not happen again. Now, if a leader emerges, first of all, you have to understand, how did Museveni get here? He got here through one of his biggest tricks in his arsenal, which is deception. He started, when they sat down after they took power and they swore him, and they sat down and said that you want to transfer power to civilians, we fought, was the revolution and what. So people were asking themselves, how long should we take before we pass on power? Should some were suggesting 5 years, others were saying, less. Do you know what Museveni says? 2 years.
Now, so 2 years were enough for him to transition.
Now he's a master deceiver. Now what is because at that time his power was not yet absolute. And he knew that if he can make people think that in 2 years he's going to hand over, in those 2 years he's going to be entrenching himself. By the time the 2 years came, he had entrenched himself in a certain way. All the people who seemed to have power, at least some all who had fought Bush wars with him, the Kairas and what, had somehow died, been murdered. So that's what it took. Then eventually after 2 years, then after 4 years, when they were saying that now it's time to remember the Zirito order,
the walkout.
Walkout, what?
Yeah.
By that time, it was too late.
89 NRC, BSJ tables the proposal to extend the movement. And Zirito said, no, you guys, you had promised us these years, now you are extending these years. Because, of course, the justification that they needed to make a new constitution. The justification for the extension to make it. But Zirito walked out and never went back.
And he regretted it because he realized
he attempted to
come back.
Much later come, but
no. And the thing is, Uganda had changed because, I'm sure you have, things fall apart.
Yes.
So when Okonkwo was trying to hold on to the old Nigerian state, but now there was no one to come and change everything, and he ends up, in a very bad place. That was important for you. In those years, there's a lot of sly things that were happening. But the point is that it has to be negotiated. After this, power has to be negotiated. And it's not going to belong to one person the way it has for 40 years.
Where do you, Joseph, place the army in these negotiations? The army is always going to be a critical player in Uganda's case. The president has placed the army front, center, and middle of whatever. We see the army in wealth creation. We see the army in parliament. We see the army in government agencies, in ministries, the PS of Ministry of Agriculture in the army. We see the army in police. Where do you, in these negotiations, where would you place the role of the army? And the current CDF is MK. What role will the army play? Because you can't discount it.
No, there's nobody discounting the role of the army. But the army is a lot more flexible than you think. The army is made of people like you and me who don't want to go to exile, who don't want to shed the blood, who want a peaceful country. That's the bottom line. They also, I mean, they also want to live peacefully in this country. So they will be on the table and it will be started. Because the honest truth is that people think that the army belongs to one person. It does not. Especially, it might to some extent belong to Museveni. But it's not going to be passed on to anybody else. Okay?
And we have two armies.
And that's the thing. Any one of them is not going to be passed on to anybody else. Like, I'm telling you, the amount of intellect, deceit, slyness, politics that it has taken from Museveni to keep this country together for 40 years cannot be replicated by anybody. It is not possible. He's the one in a generation, or how many generations, kind of politician. Because, first of all, he's a very astute politician. Very astute politician. He understands, people so well. He's a very intelligent man. Okay? Then the one thing he had is he kept everybody looking in the year now, 2 years, 3 years, whereas for him he was looking so far ahead of everybody. So that by the time they got there, their hands were tied and there's nothing they could do. Those things happen to you once. They don't happen to you twice. Now, is that the benefit of being the one who did it? Because first of all, he's not an ordinary person in terms of, as I've said, intellect and what, but especially deceit. He's unique. And that is not going to be replicated by anybody. You think you cannot do it using just brute force. You cannot. Let me tell you, even in those countries where you see father going to son and what, the Togo and so on, they create a huge cluster of people who benefit from it. And they're the ones who get the son and put it there. Now, you think everybody is complaining in Cameroon that the father has put the son? No, because the people who have made sure that the father rules from Switzerland or France are the same people who are going to give the son.
I think,
And they are giving him the same thing, just to be the figurehead, and we shall do the rest.
and you see, you remind me, I remember when Gaddafi fell, when he fell, thanks to NATO, one of his sons, a lot of groups came up trying to form, and they took certain territories of the country. So one of his sons, who had been in hiding, came out and he wrote to the US and said, actually, for me, a lot of the things my father was doing, I wasn't in support of them. I know you could do brutally, but I wasn't in support. Even I wanted to see a Libya that is peaceful, that Libya where there is some kind of democracy and what. I'm saying it was a little bit shocking for a son of a former president.
No, there's nothing shocking in there. Human beings are very selfish. Like everybody thinks in the dark, even once the person, let me tell you what, everybody is now like this because the person is there. The minute you're not there and there's no calculation to be made on somebody going forward because of you, he's going to down to your side.
We have seen one powerful politician, Joseph, already saying that for her after 2031, she's going to retire to her farm. That's the speaker. People were claiming that she had presidential. She made it clear in a very impassioned video, if you watched it. For me, I don't want anything to do with the presidency. Actually, after I serve my second term as speaker, I'm not even coming back to parliament. I'm going to retire. Could those words be taken seriously? We're already seeing some of the serious players discount themselves, in other words, from the process. And then a few days later, she turns up and she buys kits worth, I think she bought it was about 50 million. Only I think businessmen should do about 100 million worth of kits. She bought 50 million. A show of loyalty.
She wants to be speaker.
Yes.
She wants to be speaker, actually. Nobody believes when people say that I don't want to be speaker.
No, she said president.
No, nobody believes those things. Let me tell you. Like, nobody believes those things. Like, so you believe that, so you're taking her to what? She has learned from her master, who said that I only want 3 years, then afterwards I only want to make a constitution, then afterwards you have two terms, then afterwards I want to go after 75, then afterwards go and hang.
And Mao wrote after that that the only way to confirm a rumor is when it has been denied.
Officially,
Yes.
that's what we used to say in the media.
Yeah, and Mao also wrote after and Anita Mong came out and said she didn't want to be president. Said, "No, this is."
But that's the only thing, honest. It was right. So many people who were, in that period between 2001 and 2006, when Museveni was making people believe that was his final term, he tricked so many people to see who had a presidential ambition. And a lot of the people who had presidential ambitions somehow died natural death.
Or some were kicked out. I saw Bidandi Sali, people like Bidandi Sali kicked out of cabinet. Bidandi Sali went around, I think he was at the conference center in a meeting. When the people had began wearing Sanja, there was a meeting of NRM. Bidandi still had some power and said, Your Excellency, put these rumors, what? To bed. There's talk that even you're behind some of these groups of people in districts wearing Sanja and what. And I mean, as far as we know, the Constitution says you can only rule for what? Two terms. But you are also vague. It was Bidandi Sali. There was Elia Kadege and Museveni Bidandi Sali. Those two now, they had that fast falling out. The president said, I don't know these people, but I don't know. I'm not behind them. As far as I know, I'll go by what the Constitution was. But
and did anybody believe that? This boy believe it. You see, the thing is, maybe that time he was a bit more believable, but after now the thing which frustrates me about Uganda is 40 years later he still tells the same lies, the same one, but people still fall for it. He still does the same thing. You're saying we want good prices for coffee. He says we are losing a lot of money because Nescafe is making all the money for us. We don't want them. We just want money from our coffee beans. Then you tell him we want good roads. Then you say America is circling in the moon. Go to the moon if you want to go. For us, we don't want to go to the moon. We want to drive within the city, and roads are not made for 5 years. I mean, they start making a road which you move on. It's going to take 5 years to finish. I mean, what kind of road construction is that? And you're telling us about how America is going to the moon.
The oil has taken 20 years to get out of the ground.
That's different because since, that's a much huger investment. But roads, they start a road, is that Luzida,
Luzida,
it has taken more than
Shilom, Luzida and what?
When you're telling us about it, we don't want to hear Americans going to the moon. That's none of our business. But anyway, I'm saying, after all of this, the key takeaway is this. No appetite whatsoever for revenge, for retribution, for getting back at people, for anger, for keeping grudges. Otherwise, we do not build a nation. If we are going to build the nation, regardless of who is aggrieved, and there are some people and so many people who are aggrieved, regardless of who is aggrieved, we have to just put our grievances down and say, how are we going to build Uganda and move forward? That's what it takes. And that's not necessarily what so many people think should be done, but I'm convinced that's what it takes. Because the people you'll be fighting, number one, have a lot of money and can cause confusion. Using just half, a fraction of their resources, they can cause confusion if they feel they are threatened. Okay? But if you make them comfortable, instead of causing confusion with their resources, they will invest it, which is what we need, so that people get jobs, and the country can move forward. Secondly, this whole targeting of different groups of people and so on, that is real backward. That's primitivity. That cannot work if we want to build a nation. Because a nation has different communities, and we have to move away from that sort of politics, regardless of what has been done to us over these years. And a lot of things have been done to us, but we shall not go down that path. And so that's the good news for those people who are scared of what is coming next.
I think, Joseph, we shall end the conversation for today at this point, but the discussion will continue the next episode, and fairly, it's going to be very interesting.